Hi, I'm Evan MainDonald. This is Adventures in Venture, and today my guest is Gabriel Yarrison. Gabriel's a prolific investor. He's just raised his first venture capital fund. He's one of the highest rated investors in the Y Combinator network. He has the top YouTube channel on startup investing in France, and he's also an author. He's written 2 books, and in fact his second book is being released today. So Gabriel, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hey Evan, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat with you. I mean, you've done most of the work, but I'll fill in the blanks. So I'm Gabriel, French, as you've said. I am firstly an engineer. Originally, I never worked as an engineer. After my engineering school, I was an entrepreneur for many, many years. I still consider myself an entrepreneur today. But I've started many startups with very moderate success. I was still fortunate enough to have 2 exits as a founder and then turned to investing. First, I started in 2017, what is today the biggest French angel syndicate. And then 2023 started a fund called Lobster Capital. So that's me in a nutshell.
How many startup investments have you done, Gabriel?
That's a difficult question to answer because there's many, many different levels. So with the syndicate, with bigger check size, we've done, I think, between 55 and 60 investments. But me personally on the side, I've been investing since 2013, so it's been 10 years. And once again, it depends on the amount. If you're talking about investments over $1,000, there's roughly 200 of them. But I've also used the crowdfunding platforms, the crowd equity, to make investments, sometimes as little as 50 or 100 euros. And those are in the hundreds and hundreds, just because I'm so passionate about the space, I wanted to learn. Okay. And so I did, hundreds and hundreds of investment in total.
Okay, so it wouldn't be incorrect to say that you've probably done 100 or more significant size investments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's an impressive record. So look, I think there's a lot of people out there who'd like to do what you've done, and I think raising your first venture capital fund is an impressive achievement, and particularly the speed at which you did it. You and I were on the VC Labs program together. You, I believe, were the first person to raise in the cohort that we were in. So that's also an achievement in and of itself. I'd like to understand or get to the bottom of what made you you. And so what I want to start with is how you grew up and where you grew up and how that formed who you are. So could you just maybe tell me a little bit about that, about how you grew up, where you grew up, and how that formed who you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in the suburbs just outside of Paris, in a house with a garden. My home was upper middle class, probably. I was going on vacation every summer. And I'm the first son. I have 2 little brothers. And I'm not a son of entrepreneurs. My parents were employees.
Oh, by the way, just tell us how old you are.
Oh, yeah. So I was born in 1990. So I'm 32 today. Yeah. I mean, not today, but I'm 32. Yeah. Going 33 in a few months. And so, yeah, my parents weren't entrepreneurs, but they had, I think both of them, and still do, have an entrepreneurial mindset, I would say. And by that, I mean, my parents always encouraged me to do whatever I wanted and to do projects. And by that, to give you an example, when I was, I think, 16, I was like, okay, I'm going to raise some money. I was doing the Boy Scouts, right? And I said, I'm going to raise some money and I'm just going to fund my own vacation. And there's just like, okay, do it. So it's not like they helped me do it or whatever, but there's a lot of things that were allowed in the house.
Yeah.
And so I think that really helped me. I was in those kind of things. I'll give you another example. When I was 18, so 2 years after that, I told my parents I'm looking for an internship for the summer in Hong Kong.
Okay. 18.
Most parents will be like, what? This is too far. What are you going to do there? It's dangerous. You're only 18. And my parents were like, okay, have fun, honey. Be safe, and that's it.
So with those things, were they your idea?
Yeah.
Where did you get the ideas from? I mean, how did they come to you at that age?
When you're 18, you want to travel the world. So, Okay. Oh, but okay. Something else that I want to mention is my dad very early had long business. So my dad is a strategy consultant expert and works directly with CEOs of big companies in France to help them grow their companies faster. Right. Very early, he was talking about his job with me. Yeah. Just talking about, I met this CEO and this is the strategy that we're putting in place to actually help the business. He worked with some very, big, famous French companies. And I was born in 1990. So when internet came around, let's say between 2001 and 2003, I was between 11 and 13. Right. It's exactly the age where I started, becoming interested in this. And so there's a video of me that my dad shot because he thought it was amazing. When I think I was 12, and I said, when I grow up, I want to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. My dad was so amazed, I guess. He was like, who's this weird kid? So he filmed me saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do something online on the internet. It was so brand new. But I already had realized that, there were some opportunities in terms of business, in terms of creating your own business. As long as I can remember, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Mm. I never, ever considered following the traditional route of studying and just, getting a job. Yeah. So those are a few things. Do you want? I have one more. Do you want one more?
Hold the thought.
Sure,
Hold the thought. I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, do you think that was influenced by what you saw your dad do?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not impossible that he had the idea in mind, telling me all that. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to kind of instill in him the idea of doing a business, etc. Once again, he didn't want me to be an entrepreneur because he wasn't one himself. Mm. But I think, he wanted to share his passion for a strategy, for business in general, on purpose to mold me, maybe, or just because he was passionate about it and I'm his son, so he wanted to chat with me about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds to me like he kind of put you into a general path, but then let you make up your own mind. So
it's possible.
You said you have one more thing.
One more thing with computers.
Yeah.
When I was, I think, same age, 12, 13, around the times, as I said, internet was becoming mainstream. One morning, I finally mustered the courage to go to my dad and say, I want a computer.
How old were you then?
12, 13, wow. Maybe 13. I want a computer. And it's been weeks that I'm thinking about it and like, I'm so scared. I'm shaking. Like, is he going to say no for sure? I grew up with no TV allowed, no video games. You had to read books on top of the school books. Like my parents would give me homework with books. Yeah. In the summertime, my dad would, have me do next year's math and physics a school program. Okay. So when came September, I already had done everything that I was going to do this year. So that I was, good in school. So I was shaking with the computer thing. I was like, Dad, I want a computer. And I was like, sure. He was going to say, no way. We don't have TV in the house. There's nothing. And he looks at me and he says, yes. And I'm like, what do I say now? What do I do? So I asked him, I said, okay, when can we get it? Yeah. I thought he was going to say next year, whatever. He looks at me and he says, let's go tomorrow. And the next day we went and got a computer. So that's also, how, and I learned to code at 13. Just my dad gave me a computer and he said, have fun. And I, did a lot of the stupid stuff with the computer, video games, downloading movies. It's illegal, by the way, don't do it. But also learning HTML, CSS and coding and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you and I actually share quite a lot in that respect. It sounds to me like your parents were very disciplined with you when you grew up. Yeah. And actually my dad bought a computer home for me when I was 12. And I learned to program that computer, but at that time there was no internet. Yeah. It was a thing called a Commodore VIC-20. I learned to program it and I actually programmed a Space Invaders game.
That's awesome.
But I think there's something, a lot of people who are in a similar position to us have had that sort of experience where they've had a computer at a very early age, and I think it causes your brain to think in a certain way. And it's more common in your generation than it was in mine. I used to go up to my dad's work and feed punch cards into the mainframe computer with him. So that was the point that the computers were when I was growing up. But it is very interesting. My parents were also very disciplined with me. They liked me to read books. They didn't, they didn't encourage me to watch TV. They kind of limited my TV. And I do think that's good, actually, for a child that's growing up, because it helps you start to understand that maybe a slightly more disciplined approach to the world is one that will actually take you somewhere, or take you to more interesting places. So yeah, that's super interesting. So, how did that lead into you doing what you are? So you kind of had that background and that growing up experience with your father. You got acquainted with computers and technology at quite an early age, and you learned to program them and did a lot of fiddling. How did you transition from that into actually starting to do an investment?
Investment, the bridge comes from entrepreneurship. So as I said, very early from that age, I play around with computers. I discovered code. When I was 13, I coded a website that I sold to,
Okay. Oh, that was your first business?
It was, you could say that in a sense.
How old were you then?
13.
And how much did you sell it for?
100 euros. 100 euros. Yeah. So, very early from that age, I decided I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. For me, and I think I was super wrong to believe this, but for me, you had to be extremely stupid to get a job. Mm. For me, getting a job was... I was very young, right? So this is the excuse that I'm giving myself. For me, it was not even possible to consider getting a job because I was like, okay, I'm never going to do that. There's another way that's better for me. And for me, getting a job was like failing. And if I was smart enough or good enough, I could create my business. That was the way I was thinking about it at the time. I today think it's a huge mistake because not everyone is made to be an entrepreneur. And many jobs are super interesting. It was a big cliche. I was young. I was like, jobs, employee, bad. Entrepreneurship, good. Of course, obviously life is much more nuanced. But that was my thinking, my young brain's thinking. And so very, very early, I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur for sure. So to answer your question, how did that lead to investing was through entrepreneurship. When I was a student, I started building my first businesses. Or you could say when I was 13, but when I became a student, I started building my first businesses. Yes.
Do you mean student at university or at school?
University mostly.
Okay.
University.
So you went through school, you retained that interest. And so what did you study in university?
Engineering.
Engineering. Okay.
Sorry. It's like
electrical engineering.
Computer science.
Computer science.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is an electronic school, but it's a general school actually.
So you didn't come out of university and take a job?
No.
You came out and you went straight into...
entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
I actually started even before I graduated.
Right. So tell me about how you got started and what that transition was like as you came out of university.
So it was good. How I started was someday I heard the school was paying someone 300 euros per month to take care of the school's social media. And I go onto the Facebook page of the school and there's nothing. And I'm like, there's a guy earning 300, and I learned he was a student from my year, right? So he was still a student. He was making 300. So I go to the communication women of the school, right? The marketing person or whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell her, give me the 300 euros, but I'll post every day on the Facebook page. Give it to me.
Okay.
And she said, okay.
Yeah.
So I made an enemy of the guy, right?
Well, but he was doing nothing.
He was doing nothing.
Taking the money, right?
He was doing nothing.
That's called competition.
Exactly. So I was a student. And then, so I realized, this is where my entrepreneurial brain came in. I was like, wait, the school is ready to pay me 300 euros per month to do this. There's got to be other people interested in doing this. So this was 2011 or 12.
Right.
And it was the boom of social media. Everybody said, SEO is dead. You got to be on Facebook and blah, blah, blah. Have a Facebook page, a Twitter account.
So I guess at that point, you had already learned fairly well how to use social media because it was kind of a thing of your generation. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. I've always been, also something that characterizes me is I will touch at everything. So when there's social media, every time there's something new, I want to understand it, I want to use it, I want to learn about it. So as soon as it came out, I became a top user of Twitter, very from the beginning. That's how later on I came to be on YouTube. We'll talk more about that. But so I already was on social media. It's not like I discovered this. It was this new trend. Everyone was talking about it. I was like, okay, let me figure out what it is. How can I use it? I had tens of thousands of followers already on my personal accounts. Mm-hmm. So it was easy to be credible with the client to say, look, I've done it. Now I did it for free, just for fun to explore. But then I was like, and I thought, let me build my social following. I can always use it in my businesses. Yeah. So I realized, okay, this school is ready to pay 200 euros. There's got to be other companies. I went to another company said, it's 300 euro, I'll do one post per day. Second company said yes. Then third, fourth, fifth. So I was a student and had 10 customers. I was making 3,000 euros per month.
Okay.
And what I did, I hired an intern that I paid 500 euros a month. And I told him, take care of it. You do all of the posts.
Okay.
And so I was doing nothing, pocketing the difference, 2,500 euros per month, and just managing my intern while in school.
You were doing the same thing as the other guy, nothing, but earning the money for it. No, I get it.
So that was my first.
So that's interesting. And so did you take that business and continue to build it up, or did you just kind of leave it at that and use it as a learning experience?
For years, I kept it. I added a lot of things. After social media, I saw a lot of people needed website developments.
Okay.
And so being a computer science engineer, I developed a lot of websites as well on the side. It was making a lot of money, but what was bad is it was not really repeatable. You sell a website, and that's it. It's a one shot. The social media subscription was recurring, but most people would unsubscribe after, like, they would have my services for maybe 6 months.
Yes.
And they would stop just because it wasn't worth it to put 300 euros. The thing is, everyone said social media is the next big thing. Mm. So everyone jumped on it and was at the right place at the right time. Yeah. But actually, it's not worth 300 euros per month. I was doing a great job. They were having a lot of followers, but having a lot of followers, we know that today, doesn't really necessarily translate into dollars.
Well, I guess also at some point, they might work out how to do whatever you were doing themselves, decide that they could actually just take it over and then... So you found that in that business you had a lot of customer churn.
Exactly.
Effectively. What did that business teach you about business in general?
Well, do something unique. There's so many competitors. So I didn't have any pricing power. I was doing 300 euros. Then someone else was telling me, oh, this guy's doing it for 150. This guy's actually doing it for 80 euros per month. So do something unique and have something recurring that lasts, that provides value to the client. Yeah. If you sell something that doesn't actually provide value, the client is not going to end up buying it for a long time. Yeah. So those were the first learnings. But also, I was not passionate about it. It was a way to make a quick buck. It was really, I stumbled upon it in my school. So I'm not going to turn the money down. Yeah. But I didn't really like it. It was always the same thing. That's why I gave it to an intern. It was so boring. Right. Every day tweet something about this guy who's doing, gift ideas for men. It was terrible. So anyway, yeah.
Okay. So where did you go from there?
So then I started then I went on holiday on internship in Hong Kong. Right. And everyone said, oh, you're French, you should sell some wine. I was like, okay. And so then I came back, I was like, okay, I'm going to open a wine shop in Hong Kong. Okay. I did a business plan and realized to open a wine shop in Hong Kong, you need 1 million euros because you need to find a place to buy the wine, to ship it to Hong Kong, to open, to pay the employees. So like, okay, let me start with a website. I know how to do websites. And then as soon as I make 1 million euro, I thought it was going to be easy. As soon as I make 1 million euro, I'll open the shop. So spoiler alert, I never opened the shop. But my second business was a wine marketplace. So I was like, okay, what can I do differently? Everyone was selling wine. They go to the producer, they buy it, they store it. And then if you buy it on the website, they send it to you. Same thing, 2011, I think I started 2012. Everybody was talking about Amazon. Yeah. Jeff Bezos is the new king. It was growing like crazy. I think this is the first year Amazon was profitable, something like this. Everyone was talking about Amazon. I was like, wait a minute, Amazon doesn't have anything physical. I mean, not everything. They have third-party sellers. They're just the platform. So why don't I do... Today it's called drop shipping, but it didn't exist at the time. So why don't I do this with wine? So I went to wine producers in France and I said, well, I'm going to sell you wine, but you keep it on your property. And if I sell it, you ship it to the customer. Okay. Direct from the producer. So there's a whole charm, like, you're getting your wine directly from the producer himself. It's also better for the environment because it's only shipped once instead of going to a warehouse. Yeah. So that was the second business. A lot of learnings as well.
What was that business called?
It was called Le Vin de France.
Le Vin de France.
The French wine. Levindefrance.com. Okay. I had the domain name levindefrance.com. Okay. So I was like, I got to run with this. It's cool.
So you built that business up?
Yeah.
Okay. To what sort of size?
So out of 150 wine selling websites in France, I was the 14th in size, and that's a couple 100,000 euros of volume per year.
Okay. So what was that business making in profit? Was it in profit?
That's the thing.
Right.
0.
Okay.
The best year I did 4%.
Okay.
So that's a learning. That's one of the best learning I got from this business is not all businesses are equal.
Yes.
There's no margin in selling wine. Plus, wine is very heavy, and so shipping is by weight.
Yes.
So it's very expensive to ship, and it breaks.
Yeah.
So you have insurance, but you gotta front the money because you gotta. Someone has an event, the wine breaks, you gotta ship it again urgently, and the insurance is gonna give you the money back in 3 months.
So I know this business quite well.
Yeah.
I actually started a business importing New Zealand and Australian wine into the UK back in the late 90s, and set up an e-commerce website. And yes, so I'm familiar with that market. And the thing about wine that's quite interesting, it's a very traditional market. So well developed, so margins are low. But I think it's also one of those markets, a bit like art, or like just that people want to be in. Yeah. So people will do it without needing to make a lot of money out of it because they just love it. So some bits of the property market are like that. It's hard to make money because people just want to be in it. They want to buy a particular property, so they're not looking at value. They're just looking at what they want. And so I can understand it would have been quite difficult to make money out of that business. Did you sell that, or what did you?
Yes,
do? Yeah.
I was able to sell it. So,
how much did you get for it?
I'm not at liberty to say. I can say off sadly.
Was it a lot or a small amount?
It was in the middle. I didn't retire, but I can tell you the amount. I'm not supposed to. There's a contract, whatever. But I don't want it to be online. But it's not like I'm not going to work for 10 years.
Sure.
But it's still a little bit of money that I could then start to invest.
You started doing your next thing, so it was worth doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was for the learnings anyway. It was huge.
Yeah. Okay. And then what did you do after that?
After that, I left to China. Okay. And so the thing is, I sold the business because I just wanted to get out of it. It was I hated it.
Yeah.
And
so by this time you started 2 businesses that you ended up hating.
The first one I didn't hate it. The first one I wasn't passionate about it.
Yeah. Okay.
This one I grew to actually hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I needed some fresh air. I was almost doing a burnout in Paris. Always doing the business, growing in revenue, but not growing in margins.
Yeah.
It was so irritating and painful.
Yeah.
And by the way, something that I haven't mentioned, but I try to mention every time is failing a business is super hard personally, because when you're an entrepreneur, you identify as your business. You're like, I'm the wine guy. I'm the social media guy.
It's your baby, right?
Exactly. And so when you're failing,
it defines you.
You're thinking, well, I'm worthless. I'm a worthless person because the only thing that I was doing ended up failing. So, I sold it, but I was not happy. It's not a huge exit, right? Yeah. So for me, it was still a failure because I had bigger ambitions.
Right.
And so when it's so hard, you're really looking at yourself in the mirror and say, why did I fail? Because it's so painful. I don't want it to happen again. And so I needed a change of scenery. So I decided I took a one-way flight to Shanghai for 2 weeks from now. And I was like, that's it. Let me change my life and just move to China.
Right.
That was it.
That must have caused you a few problems with visas and stuff like that.
Yes, I had a 30-day visa because that's what it is in China, right?
Yeah.
And I had 30 days to find a job. It's like in the US, you need a job, You need an employer to sponsor you.
How old were you then?
25.
Okay.
25. And after 30 days, of course, I didn't find a job.
Yeah.
So I went to spend 24 hours in Japan,
yeah.
Then flew back into China. They gave me another 30-day visa. They're like, okay, try again. So after another 30 days, finally, I still didn't have a job.
Right.
So anyway, I went to Hong Kong, applied for a third visa. They didn't allow me for 30 days. They said, okay, you can have 2 weeks. And then in those 2 weeks, I found a job, got a 1-year visa, and was able to stay in China.
What was that job?
It's a job that I kept for 2 months. I was working as social media slash SEO slash everything that I learned how to do in my previous businesses for a Chinese startup.
And then what did you do after that?
After 2 months, it was horrible. I quit. My visa should have been revoked, but actually it wasn't.
Right.
And so after being an employee for 2 months, I was like, okay, now it's time to get back into it. And I started another business.
And what was that business?
My business was B2B e-learning content producer. So it was an e-learning, almost like a editor or content creator.
Okay.
But also a website to sell that. So it was a platform. We were creating our own content.
Right.
In the management soft skills for French companies in the French language. So it was
Okay.
a French business, but I was doing it from China.
Okay. So that is the business that you've just sold, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So that you kept that business for a long time, and I guess it must have made some money over.
Yes.
Yeah. But why were you doing that in China? I mean, just because it's a different place to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just wanted, to have fun. Shanghai is a very fun place when you're young and single.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
Once again, Paris was it became very painful for me to stay here in my business, in my little routine, in the wine business that I hated, that I grew to hate.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, enjoy life.
Okay. So how did you get from there to becoming an investor? How and why?
I was investing for a while at that point.
Right.
I started investing in 2013. So
Okay, so you started investing while you were working on these businesses. You were taking the money
absolutely
out of these businesses and you were investing it in what?
In startups.
Tech startups?
Yeah,
Okay.
tech startups.
With any particular focus?
No, anything I could get my hands on, which was not a lot at the time.
Yeah.
It's very few. But so when I was in engineering school, there was this student angel club. No, sorry, not student. There was the school angel club.
Yeah.
And I applied to join when I was still a student. But they said, oh, so by the way, something to understand. I inherited from my grandma when I was a student, 30 grand.
Okay.
And instead of putting it on a bank account, I said I'm going to invest it in startups.
Right.
And so I applied to join the club, the angel club from the school, and they say, oh, you can't. You have to be graduated from the school to join.
Okay.
So 1 year later,
Yeah.
I graduated and I applied. I was like,
Right.
let's do it. So immediately I joined the club, and this is how I made my very first investment in 2013, so 10 years ago.
Right.
And all the way while doing the wine business, while going to China, I was still investing on the side whenever I could, which was not often at all.
Yep.
But I was still trying to keep a foot in that area and invest whenever I could. Yeah.
Okay.
And I invested all of that money that I got. Yeah.
Right. And how many startups did you put that into?
Well, I mean, my very first investment was 10K. So it was already a
Right.
third of what I had. Then I tried to make the other ones 5K. So that's 4 plus 1, that's 5 in total.
Okay. And do you think that how do you feel about how you allocated that?
Well, it was not diversified enough, but my minimum check size was too high. That's actually why I ended up creating my syndicate. Was every time I was meeting a startup, the best case was they were allowing me to put in 10K, but sometimes it was 50K, 100K, which I didn't have.
Right.
And so I was like, how can I invest in I wanted to invest 1, 2, 3, 4K, and I couldn't. It was too small. So that's how I got the idea of the syndicate of saying, if I want to invest 2K, but I've got 10 friends, then that's 20K.
Okay.
So that's how I got the idea.
So you were in China for a year, and then you came back to
2 years.
France.
2
2
years.
years.
Yeah.
2 years, and then you came back to France.
Yes.
During that time, you were running this training business, online training business, and you were also investing.
Yes.
So
on my own.
On your own.
Yeah.
And so you continued investing
Yeah.
up until the end of that 2 years. How many investments did you have by that point?
In total,
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
Not even.
Okay. And then at the end of that 2 years, you came back to France.
Yeah.
And then is that the point at which you started the syndicate?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
tell us
So
about
the-
the syndicate.
The last year when I was in China,
Yeah.
I already started the premise of the syndicate. I started a Facebook group. I met a few friends in China
Yeah.
that had expat contracts. So they had a lot of money. French people had a lot of money. And I told them I was investing, and they said, oh, I want to invest with you. So at that point, I created a small group on Facebook, an actual Facebook group.
Yeah.
I think there was, at the end, 12 of us. At the beginning, 5, 6, with few family members, few friends from China, and few friends from France that expressed an interest in what I was doing. And I was like, guys, next time I'm investing, I'll share it with you.
Right.
We can all go in together.
Yeah.
And I tried to make a few deals happen that way.
Right.
So that was the premise of everything else.
So initially that group was like 10 to 20 people, basically, all people that you knew.
5 to 12. It was 12 maximum.
Really?
Everyone I knew.
Okay.
Everyone I knew.
Right.
And at that point, a few things happened. One is I read a book called Expert Secrets from Russell Brunson.
Right.
That the book said, if you have an expertise on a topic, you can make a business out of it.
Yep.
So that's one thing. The other thing is I watched a webinar from a French YouTuber who said you can make it big on YouTube even in 2017. You're late to the party, but you should publish 1 video per day for 1 year.
Yep.
And so when I came back to France, The e-learning business was doing okay, but once again, it was not growing as quickly as I had hoped.
Yep.
It was making money. I was paying myself. It was good. But I always had super big ambition, so I wanted something more.
Yeah.
And so finally, when I came back, I put the pieces together. I was like, okay, this angel thing, there's a lot of people who are interested. I want to try to actually monetize it, and I can do it via YouTube. And so I started the business. I started the YouTube channel. I decided to post one video per day on YouTube for 1 year, which I ended up doing for 2 years. And that's how I got started. That's how, 2017.
Right. So you're back in France. It's 2017. Yeah. You've got this Facebook group. So did you start to you started posting videos on YouTube, and did you use that to grow the Facebook group? Yes,
originally I did. I wasn't even sure. I didn't remember. But initially the community was the Facebook group.
Right.
So, but very, very quickly I tried to monetize that. Okay. So I think I got the first 2 or 3 people for free. Okay. But then I said, if you want to join the group, the Facebook group, you got to pay. So it was a paid Facebook group initially.
Yeah, it was free initially, but then it was...
So free and then paid.
How many people did you have in the group when you started to monetize it? In other words, how many people were there when you started to make new people pay?
12.
Okay, so not very many.
No, yeah. Like I think I got 1 or 12 was my friends and stuff. I think I onboarded 2-3 people for free, so maybe 15. But after that, you got to pay.
So how did that work sort of mentally for you? You were like, I started this thing is to actually increase because the purpose was to kind of increase your investment firepower a way, and enable you to participate with smaller amounts in deals. But how did you sort of transition from it's
the book.
I can monetize. Right.
So it's the book, Expert Secrets.
Okay.
Expert Secrets.
So you read that book, you thought, oh, hang on a minute, I've got this thing, I can monetize it. Okay.
The book says you have an expertise, you can make a business out of it.
Yeah.
On your own. And I was like, what's my expertise? It was pretty obvious. It was like, everyone kept asking me to invest in startups with me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm actually creating value for those guys. I'm not going to do it for free. So
Yeah. Okay.
I made the switch very easily.
Interesting. So when you started charging people, how much did you charge initially?
500 euros per year.
Per year. And did you have any resistance to that?
Yeah.
You did?
Oh my God. So much. It was non-existent. I had 0 deals done. The only thing I was said is, look, I've personally invested before and it's doing okay. Like it was 9 people out of 10 were saying like, oh my God, no, never. I'm not going to pay.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Where did these people come from? Were they from the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel, I did some advertising on Twitter.
What were you doing? Like putting in mobile number out there? Because in those days, how are you
capturing emails?
Capturing the emails. So you're having a conversation over here and then setting up a conversation, or
setting up conversation or exchanging emails and stuff like that.
So you got through like 9 of these saying no. Did you? Were you starting to think, is this going to work?
A little bit, but like I've said, I'm very persistent.
Yeah.
And I knew people were interested to invest.
Okay, you kind of got this. You got the interest signals, but you hadn't quite got to. I've closed, and then you must have been at some point you closed your first one.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Awesome. I mean, it's not like your first sale online. The very first sale online was when I sold my first bottle of wine. You set up the website. You've been working for weeks, and you don't even see the guy.
Yeah.
Just some money pops up on your account, and you made a sale. It's like the feeling is incredible.
But I guess also at that point you knew it would work.
Yeah. Exactly. And so. Well, exactly. You know people are actually buying. So when I sold to the first guy, I'm like, it works. It's gonna be something cool.
Okay.
I didn't know how big it would become. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought it would make a nice, additional revenue on the side or whatever. I didn't know it would become a behemoth in France anyway. But I was like, okay, it's possible. He's paying. He sees value. I knew there was value in it because every time I was talking about it, people were like, oh, I want to invest. I want to do that as well. Right. Sure, I knew the value was there. But the first guy who paid, of course, always kind of unlocks something in you. Yeah.
So that was back 2017.
Yeah.
So tell me about what's happened with that syndicate between now and then.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I've had in total 700 people invest with the syndicate. Right. I grew the YouTube channel to 40,000 subscribers, which is still my main acquisition channel for the investors. It's the largest French channel on that topic. And from 2017, the biggest change is from 2017 to 2020, we were investing in French startups because I was living in Paris.
Okay.
Every investment that I made in my life was in a French startup.
Yeah.
And literally overnight, as you can probably tell, I do understand English. And so one morning I woke up. I don't know what got to me, but one morning I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, why am I investing in France where clearly the best startups in the world all congregate at the same place, which is called Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Everybody knows this, so why invest in France? And so I booked a plane ticket to San Francisco, and I was like, let's go, baby. Let's find a US startup to invest in.
That was 2020?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in terms of the amount of income that you were getting from the people who are subscribing to your, would you call them subscribers? To your...
Yeah, members, but subscribers is
members,
fine. Yeah.
Members, the members of your syndicate. Just tell me how that built up over those years from 2017 through to 2020.
2020 really is the year that I exploded. So I was, fortunate enough. The timing was exquisite for me.
So just first year revenue. What was it like? I don't know.
2017 was zero, or like
zero?
1,000 euros. 2018, I think I remember the numbers, was 50k.
Okay, so not a lot.
Something like that.
But nice to have.
2019, God, 2019 must have been 300k maybe.
Okay, so starting to build up.
make.
So you're starting to think, wow, this is something.
For sure.
And then next year.
And then 2020 was over 600k, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And then 2021, 22 was much higher.
Right.
I'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
But much higher.
Okay, so
I've told you before.
That turned into it. You have. That turned into a serious business by then.
Oh, for sure. So the thing is, I was very lucky. Everyone who has success in business has a part of luck. I was super lucky. Interest rates were at an all-time low ever. So people were looking for other things.
We're in that free money period, yeah.
Exactly. Money was free. Everyone was rich on crypto, wanted to invest in startup.
Yeah.
But also COVID. I started in 2017, at the end of 2017. But 2018 and 2019, that's the 2 years where I published daily on YouTube. So I had, by 2020, 700-800 videos on YouTube working for me. Because even if you publish a video, there's still people watching it weeks, months later. So everyone was stuck at home. Yeah. Everyone was on YouTube. Everyone had free money. Everyone went on my channel and said, oh, there's a crisis. There's an opportunity. I want to invest. So 2020, I exploded. It was crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all those people were sitting at home watching web content, basically.
Exactly.
So it was 2020. You went to Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
When in 2020?
Actually, first time there, I think it was December 2019.
Right, so that was just before COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you stay for long or not? I mean, because I'm just thinking at some point, like March 2020, COVID would have come along and kind of...
It was finished.
Yeah.
By March, I'd been to San Francisco at least twice, maybe 3 times.
Right.
So I started in 2019 to explore without going there.
Right.
So the way I tell it is I went and that was it. No, I actually explored from home, from a computer, tried to... have some contact there. The first investment I made, I hadn't been to Silicon Valley, but it was actually a French guy who was doing his business in Silicon Valley. Okay.
So
started with the French...
You had a contact out there.
Yeah. The French mafia, you could say. But very quickly I realized...
Mafia française.
Mafia française, exactly.
Oui.
Exactly, absolutely. I started from there. But went there, met a bunch of people. And something that really did help was I already had a running investing syndicate in France.
Right.
Had I gone there at the very beginning with just hopes and dreams, like, oh, I want to invest, I want to do this and that, people wouldn't take me seriously. But I came in and I was like, I'm already writing 10 checks per year. At the time, it was roughly 150k per deal, 10 times a year in French startups. And I said to everyone that I met, I want to give money to US startups. So some doors ended up opening for me because, startups are looking to fundraise. So that's how I approached. That's how it happened.
Okay, so you've become one of the top investors in the Y Combinator network, and you spend a lot of time talking to startups about something called product market fit, and we'll come to that in a minute. How did you get involved with Y Combinator?
It's a bit of...
And why?
And why?
Yeah.
It's a bit of luck and a bit of persistence. I was trying to get into the network, into the YC community for a long time, and I couldn't. It's very closed. You can't get in. But I was very persistent, and I was actually lucky enough that I had made an investment in a French company 2 years before that the company was accepted into YC. And YC doesn't accept a lot of companies outside of the US, so it was a very, very good startup.
Can you say which company that was?
Yeah, it's called Action Desk.
Okay. Oh, I know
Action
them,
Desk. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And I was good friends with Jonathan because I was helping him acquire customers and getting to product market fit.
Yeah.
which we'll come to. And he became good friends with a bunch of YC partners.
Okay.
And he actually vouched for me. He said, okay, Gabriel is really the real deal. He's investing decent amounts of money. He's helping founders. So that's how I was able to get into the YC network.
Okay, so for people that don't know, just could you explain a little bit about what Y Combinator is and why it's important?
Sure.
Yeah.
Y Combinator is the biggest startup incubator in the world. Startup incubator helps startup grow faster.
And I believe it was one of the first to employ the model it employs, right?
It is one of the first. I think it was started in 2004.
Yeah.
It's in San Francisco. And it has a very specific method with a lot of coaching from alumni that come back and help the new people. It's a very intense program. It's 24/7 for 3 months.
Yeah. So
And
my understanding is they select from something like 1,000 or 2,000 people that apply for the program. Maybe 10% get in or less.
No, it's much more than that. There's tens of thousands of startups that apply each year.
Yeah.
And they select less than 1%.
And the ones that get that's very, very strict selection criteria.
Super strict.
And the ones that get in, I understand that they get a lump sum of investment, like 100 or 200k. That YC takes, say, a 7% stake in the in the startup. Or
YC takes 7%. They used to give them at the beginning it was 50k, then it went to 150k. Today it's 500k that you get.
Wow.
Still 7%.
When did it go to 500k?
Last year.
Amazing. That's a lot of money.
It is.
Yeah. And so, what do they do with those startups then?
And So YC has earned the reputation of being the best incubator because they incubated some very, very famous Silicon Valley startups. The most famous are Airbnb, Stripe, Coinbase, Dropbox, DoorDash, Twitch, Reddit, etc.
Yeah.
And so
household names these days.
Sorry?
Household names these days.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the program is, for me, I characterize it as a brainwash.
Yes.
in the positive sense.
Yeah.
But the main thing is. Their mantra is make something people want. And so they are all about getting product market fit or getting something in front of a customer that a customer is ready to pay for.
Yeah.
And that's what every startup should do. I think they are really right into their philosophy. There's so many people so many entrepreneurs spend a lot of time on things that are not as essential, not that they're futile, but getting customers is what every business is doing.
Well, it's about making some meaningful progress with technology, but also combining that with something that people actually want. So it's
speed. And it's about speed as well.
And speed as well. Yeah, you're right. Which actually the training program and the funding helps with, and also because when you come out of YC, you've got access to a big funding network and you've got the reputation associated with being a YC startup. Then actually you have that advantage as well.
That's true.
But
they want you to accelerate even before.
But I think, and we'll come back to this in a minute, that combination of marketing and sales skills and technical prowess
for sure
is really the thing to me that defines. It's got to be at the nub of any startup that's going to be successful, and it's one of the reasons why I think the combination of technical plus sales and marketing founder is a really strong one.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you find those two things in the same person, but it's quite rare. But I understand they put people through this boot camp process, so they take them off for like an 8-week or 10-week, whatever it is, program to actually just teach them how to start a startup as well. And that's part of the whole training thing as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
3 months, yeah.
Okay, so you get yourself, an introduction to YC?
Yeah.
And how did that work? How did that develop?
There's this list, this VIP list,
right,
that gets invited to the demo day. So after the 3 months, there's something called a demo day where the startups present in front of a floor of investors.
Yes.
They show what they've accomplished in 3 months and where they're at.
Yeah.
And almost all of them are actually raising at that point because it's perfect timing. Everyone's looking at them. It's time to raise. And once again, impossible to get on that list.
Yeah.
Impossible. So after Jonathan made the introduction, I got the email. You're invited to the next demo day.
Okay.
And that was it.
That was just a question of knowing somebody who was on the inside.
Being on the list.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. So that must have been for you, must have felt like a big sort of step. When did that happen?
The first demo day was August 2020.
Right.
It was a huge break. Huge break for me. Changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what have you done with YC since then?
30-something investments, $18 million in total.
Okay. But I'm aware also that you've got involved with a lot of YC startups in terms of coaching them.
That's very true.
So, so just can we explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. YC deals, I quickly realized, are super competitive. So I came in, right? This new young bird, fresh out of the shell. Oh, hello, it's me. I want to invest in your startup. Well, actually, that's not how it works, because there's thousands of investors who are battling to get into those rounds.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people know that those are the best startups in the world, the most promising. So you gotta have yourself, make yourself a spot in those rounds. So at the beginning, I was, talking to startups, committing capital to them, like, okay, Evan, I want to invest, 200K. Actually, they turned me down, which is already in itself something pretty new,
because they had an offer from a better investor,
exactly.
Right? Somebody else who they were like, it's from, I don't know, Sequoia. We want
exactly.
We want those guys on the cap.
They have too much money offered to them. So a typical YC startup will usually have between 2 and 4 times too much money offered to it as it wants to raise.
Right. So they're in a position to say, actually, I want that investor, not that one.
Yeah. And so I was the new guy, no one knew me, so like, nope, sorry. And so I quickly realized, okay, getting the intro is good, but now I got to do better than that. So at the beginning, I was probably getting knocked off 1 deal out of 2 that I was trying to make. Roughly 50% were saying no. Okay. And they were the best ones, obviously.
Yeah. And
so my lucky break came because very early I made 2 investments that were not super popular. They were kind of counterintuitive. Right. So they were not super popular inside the YC community. Most people were thinking this is maybe not a good deal, but they both turned out to be exceptional.
What were they?
BIC.
Okay.
At the time it was called BKE.
Okay.
It's Shopify for India.
Okay.
And the other one is called Oxygen.
Okay.
Is neobank for SMBs.
Okay.
So both of those businesses
in the US or
in the US.
Okay. Yeah.
Both of those businesses in the 2 years following my investments grew incredibly quickly.
So the investments were marked up. They got like new further investments rounds. The values of the business went up to what sort of? Just give me
roughly 30x in 2 years, both of them.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
actually,
so have you exited either of those yet?
Not yet. But let's see.
And what sort of valuations are they at now in terms of, compared to the original valuation you invested at?
I mean, both of them are not unicorns yet.
Okay.
But could be in a not so distant future.
Okay.
I mean, right now, it's this question. I mean, they would probably already be without the big dip in valuations.
Yeah.
Right now, valuations are terrible. So
Yeah. No, we're going through a period of famine.
Exactly. So
which will be followed by a period of feasting.
Absolutely. So in a few years, once the valuations pick back up, they're gonna. But yeah. So right now, it's tough to answer this question. But we had Sequoia invest 1 year after us in BK.
Wow.
So we invested in 2020. In 2021, Sequoia comes in at a higher valuation. So that was amazing.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know, Sequoia are one of the biggest and oldest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. So if Sequoia come into an investment, that's a real vote of confidence, and other investors tend to follow.
And so the YC community is very small.
Yeah.
And so everyone knows about the companies that are actually growing quickly and making it. Once you get an investment from Sequoia, everyone hears about it.
Yeah.
And so the first year, no one knew me, and I did those 2 deals. I was lucky enough to get a spot. But the next year, everyone was like, "Oh, you're the guy who invested in BKE and Oxygen.
Okay,
we want you. Yeah. We want you on the cap table."
So that built your reputation as an investor, making those 2 really good investments
super quickly. And that's 2 out of maybe 10 that I did. The others didn't make it as well, but you don't care. In startup investing, as long as you do have winners, the other ones don't really matter.
Well, that's the thing, though, isn't it? I mean, and I think one of the things that people, when they look at these kind of investments and think that's really risky, what they don't understand is that in order to be successful, you need to have portfolio diversification. You need to have a certain minimum number, because you have to count on a proportion of them failing.
What's really interesting...
Otherwise, there's too much risk.
And some of them will fail. It's an obligation. There's no escaping it. What's really fascinating with startup investing, it's one of the only type of investment where if 3/4 of everything you invest in goes to zero, and you can still make a lot of money. It's super counterintuitive. If you invest in real estate and half of your properties goes to zero, you're in deep trouble.
2 completely different investment classes.
Yeah.
And you can invest in 3 or 4 properties. If it's not, property development is different. Property investment, you can invest in 3 or 4 properties. You're never going to lose all your money.
Exactly.
The very worst case is the market might go down a bit.
If you're in
it for the short term, but startup investing completely different, and that whole portfolio diversification piece is super important. That's why people invest in syndicates and invest in venture capital funds because they can offer that portfolio diversification and risk amelioration, and also that close management of the investment that's needed to ensure that A, they're selected carefully, and B, that as much value is added to them to increase their chances of success. That's essentially what, in my mind, venture capital is about. Anyway, we're jumping ahead. So that gave you a bit of reputation,
and then I started helping them a lot.
Yeah. So how did that transition into starting helping happen?
Well, I mean, the few first investments that you make, then once you're an investor, they're going to come to you and ask you questions.
Okay.
I was a founder. I had one exit at the time, now two.
So you were helping the companies you'd invested in and giving them advice about what?
Mostly growth, mostly how to find customers, everything that I could help them with. I did a lot of things in all of my previous startups. On the wine business, I learned about SEO, so I taught them this. Right. I had a YouTube channel from 2017, so I told them about social media.
So you were super strong on digital marketing and social media marketing, effectively. Yeah. That's the thing that you were helping with them.
A lot of other things, getting B2B sales. When I was doing the e-learning business, I did a lot of B2B sales. Yeah. Cold outreach, whether email or even on the phone. Something I didn't mention. To get my wine website going, I called 40,000 wine producers in France, one by one.
And how many of those did you end up selling wine for?
150.
Wow. Okay. So that's
over 2 years, right? Over 2 years, I called 40,000.
Yeah.
So, and I learned how to I A/B tested my scripts, etc. Then I ran a lot of webinars, not for the one producers, but for the e-learning. So I was learning a lot about webinars and how to run a webinar successfully. I've run hundreds of webinars in my life. So I was teaching this to the companies, etc., etc. And so there's something on the Y community who provides a lot of technology for their startup. One thing they provide is called Bookface. It's a tool that only YC companies can access, where every investor is rated. So they can say, oh, Evan invested in me, and this was really good. He helped me with this and that. Or, this person invested in me, but he actually didn't provide any value, couldn't reach him, etc. So I was new in this environment. I wanted to prove my value and my worth. So, I was always available, always trying to help, and very quickly got very high ratings on that platform. Okay. And so after a few years of, and YC is a very small community. So even if I talk to a founder that I actually don't end up investing in him, I always offer to help. I always give immediate feedback in the call. They told me this and this and that. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to invest because I think your customer acquisition is not there yet. But actually something you could explore is doing this and this and that. I've done it before in my previous businesses. It worked really well. If you want, we can take some time apart and do it together, etc. So my reputation grew like this as well. Yeah. And that also helps me today get deals done.
So even if you weren't investing, you would do everything you could to offer value and actually try and help the startup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Progress.
Still do today.
Yeah, great.
It's funny, I do this all the time. I don't know why people don't. Right now we're in an event.
Yeah.
I met this guy.
Yeah.
He was looking for an investor. I actually introduced him to you.
Yes.
And after I told him, oh, you shouldn't have done this like that. You actually increase your chances if you did it like that. I'm not gaining anything out of it. It's just, and the guy, and I saw in his eyes, he told me, thank you so much. Yeah. He's like, that's so cool. You're direct. You're helping me. And I don't care. I just made him happy. It took me 2 minutes of my life.
Exactly. And you know what? I think when you've been around the block a few times and you've seen a few companies, and actually when you're seeing it from an investor's perspective, it's different. And I know, and I guess it's the same for you. You've seen it from the perspective of someone operating a business and somebody investing in a business. It is a different perspective. And when you start to look at it from an investor's perspective, you see angles that entrepreneurs don't see. Yeah. But I think probably, like me, you get an immense amount of just personal satisfaction out of being able to help people if you can, and why not? Sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day we're kind of all in this together, we're in life together. Yeah. If we can help each other in small ways, it's a great thing, and money is not the only thing. In fact,
for sure,
you could argue money is the kind of the thing that you need to water the plant, right? The plant needs water to survive, but it isn't necessarily the most important thing. Yeah. It might be where you put the plant in the first place, or what else you do with it.
It's very interesting. I do think that I had a very interesting relationship with money because for the longest time when I was young, I was chasing it.
Yeah.
Because it was a measure of my success.
Yeah.
And when I got some success and I got some money, immediately realized it was worthless. I mean, money is good. It gives you a little bit of comfort. You go on vacation to a nice hotel. First of all, you realize you don't need to be a gazillionaire to have nice vacation. You make, even with little money if you're scrappy enough, but very quickly realize it's meaningless. What has meaning is meeting people, doing stuff that matters. And for me personally, it's family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's meaningful when you don't have enough of it. It can cause problems when you don't have enough of it.
Money solves money problems.
But when you get to the point where you don't need it, then you realise it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
And so actually, for me, being able to help people in those small ways, and just like as you said, seeing the kind of gratitude in that guy's eyes when you helped him out, and it cost you didn't have to do it. It cost you nothing.
Yeah.
To me, that's the reward in and of itself.
Absolutely.
And so if you can do that, there's that's worth more than
and,
anything
yeah,
money
and
can buy.
by the way, this is how you build your reputation as well. I mean, the next time this guy hears about something, it's like, oh wow, I met this guy, Gabriel. He's super, precise in what he's. I don't know. He's going to think of me for something else. So it's even I'm not doing it for this, obviously, but it's actually a smart move as well.
Yeah, it is. It is. I agree. So you have ended up specialising in something called, and particularly in helping startups in the YC network, was something called product market fit.
Yeah.
Can you explain what product market fit is? Or achieving product market fit?
Product market fit.
Yeah.
So I personally call this traction, but it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's make something people want is how YC calls it. It's basically once your startup is actually able to deliver exactly value that a customer is interested in and is ready to buy at that price. So if you're there's this joke or whatever, like if you're a food truck selling pizza or burgers or whatever, the best place for you to be is outside of a nightclub at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So everyone comes out, is drunk, and is super hungry. So this is what the startup wants to achieve. But when it's on the digital world, it's not about where you put your food truck. It's about customer acquisition and the value that you offer. And if you're an app, there's millions of apps. So how do you, how does your app differentiate and attract customer? What value does it actually provide so that people use it, buy it, and it's kind of a snowball effect of more and more and more and more people are using it?
Yeah. So look, I've seen a few definitions of product market fit. And one of them is that when you get to the point where customers say that they can't do without your product. So in other words, if you give it to somebody and they use it and then you take it away and they're like, oh, I need that, I can't do without it.
That's a very good definition, yeah.
Another one is the one that you referred to earlier, which is traction. And so if you were trying to establish that a company had achieved product market fit via traction, what would you look for?
I mean, it's always case by case, right? But the big trends, I mean, if you want to put it into numbers or something to look for specifically, I'd say over 30% of monthly growth for at least 3 months, and for something more than cents or, a few, like if you're going from $5 to $8 to $12, yes, you're growing. So for a it doesn't have to be millions, but for something in between, something significant enough.
Yeah.
And if you have at least 30% for 3 months, and it's repeatable, or somehow automated, then this is starting to look like traction. If you look really by the numbers.
So that's going to equate probably in terms of revenue growth to doubling or maybe quadrupling annually, something like that probably?
You can make it, if you do 30% per month for 12 months, that's, I think, between tripling and quadrupling, something like this. Yeah.
Okay. And how much, so you would want to see a minimum of 3 months worth of that before you concluded, and that I'm guessing that sort of minimum is going to be, ideally you want to see 6 or 9 months.
Oh, for sure.
Or more.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the thing is, nobody sustains this for 10 years. It's impossible. No one ever has.
No.
But if you're able to sustain it for 2+ years, for sure you're going to have a great company.
Well, so when you achieve product market fit, the startup sort of goes through this burst phase where they grow super quick, and then inevitably it will start to level off because nobody can grow at that rate forever. So, I mean, achieving this kind of burst of activity, of growth activity, is something that a lot of startups never get to.
Absolutely.
The ones that fail
it
never
is
get
super
there.
difficult.
And it's a really critical point because at the point that you achieve that, you can start to raise significantly more money.
Oh, for sure.
So that point is what some people would call late seed or maybe Series A stage. So when you first started, perhaps that seed/late seed. when you've really got it established and it's clear, you're probably into Series A in terms of funding. You help startups understand how to get to product market fit.
Absolutely.
And you're good at it. I know you're good at it because I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it with some of the companies that I'm working with. What I'd like you to try and explain, because you and I have talked about this before this conversation, and you said to me yourself that it's something of an art, not necessarily a science. You sort of know it when you see it, but maybe you can't quite exactly explain it. But what I'd like you to do is explain to the extent that you can, when you work with a startup and you're trying to help them achieve product market fit, and they haven't, because they just can't seem to get that traction. They're sort of bouncing along, bit of revenue up and down, but not quite there. How do you help them through that process? What steps do you go through? What are the practical steps that you work through to get them from A to hopefully product market fit, A to B? Yeah.
So you're right. I haven't, I don't have a specific method written that it's more in my head. But if I try to kind of formalize it, I mean, let's go with examples, because every company, there's types of companies that are different. It depends if it's B2C, B2B. But the first thing that I want is for it to be repeatable. Okay, before that, you want to make sure that the customer has value. I just mentioned that before. Like, it's something that people actually want. And, you can, for instance, YC really asks the founders to talk with the customers all the time. The CEO spends an hour every day talking with his customers to really understand what they want, what they need, what they like, what they don't like, etc. So you got to make sure that what you're creating is really what people want. That's the first thing. Then it's about repeatability. If you have the best product but no one hears about it, so first of all, it's about reaching your customers before repeatability. If you have the best product but no one knows about it, then there's this thing, I think it's from Warren Buffett. Would you rather be the best lover but everyone thinks you're the worst lover, or be the worst lover but everyone thinks you're the best lover? So if you have the best product but no one hears about it, you
got a problem.
Nothing's going to ever happen, right? So it's
but also, you're going to have a huge problem if everyone tries your product and they're disappointed, right?
And hates it, exactly. The first thing is have a product that people want. The next thing is putting it in front of other people. So this is a very broad topic, but basically B2C, getting in front of users, it's social media, influencer campaigns, ads, SEO, every kind of online, most of the time it's online marketing. I actually have a Mexican startup that I invested into. They don't do online marketing. They go into the market in Mexico City when people are grocery shopping, and they hand out flyers. And this is how they acquire customers. Right. Airbnb is famous because at the beginning, every Airbnb place was automatically posted on Craigslist.
Right.
Right? Or you have the viral loops, the famous PS I love you from Hotmail, that every time you send an email, it creates a viral loop. So how do you put it in front of the eyes of the customer?
It's a kind of growth hacking thing, right?
Yeah, it can. The PS I love you is a growth hacking thing. It doesn't have to be growth hacking. It can be as simple as a Facebook ad. If you have a good unit economics, your ad is very cheap. It converts.
Yeah.
You actually make more money from the customer right away.
Yeah, it needs to be a repeatable flywheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It needs to be repeatable. That's the main word. And so what to look for?
But I use the word flywheel deliberately because the whole
self-reinforcing, right?
As the flywheel spins up, it goes faster, so it accelerates.
That's even better. But even if it's not a flywheel, it's just something scalable.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I was just an hour ago talking to one of my startup that they're growing 60% per month.
Wow.
It's a banking app in a very specific market.
Yeah.
And it's a banking app for Latinos in the US.
Okay.
So there's 65 million Latinos in the US. Mm-hmm. And they have their own specific needs, sending money back home, grouping money together. That's something they have in their culture that Americans don't, etc. Okay, they're doing 60% per month. There's they don't even need to be a flywheel as long as they attract that many customers and grow so quickly. Even if it's not self-reinforcing, if the entrance of the pipe has enough people coming in, it's enough, right?
If
it's a flywheel, it's even better.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like this is something that's just spreading in the Latino community because it's something
that's
that
true.
works for them. So the flywheel is that they're social. They're just talking to
There's always a flywheel with recommendation, word of mouth. So, no, you're right. So anyway, it needs to be repeatable. And so what to avoid is someone, and there's so many startups, especially in the B2B space. B2B is more difficult, I guess, to have repeatability and automation. Because so many people, they create a B2B business, and I ask them, okay, you got how many customers? 5. Awesome. Congratulations. You have traction. It's growing. How did you get them? Oh, I did email outreach and my personal network and LinkedIn. Okay. How does that grow to 1,000 customers? Answer, it doesn't. So this is a trick. They get the first 5 customers, it grows, gets people to invest, and then right away, 1 month after the investment, the company flatlines.
Because they don't have a repeatable process for scaling the business.
Exactly. If you want the company to become a unicorn, which is usually your goal, even in B2B, it needs to have thousands of customers.
Yeah.
And so it's going to require to go much further out of the founder's network.
So it sort of feels to me like the first step in the process for your evaluation is this a product that's attractive to the market? That's and then the second step is there this repeatable process that can be employed to actually scale the thing? But the first one feels to me like it's quite a subjective evaluation. It's you looking at it saying, do I think this really works or not?
No, that's not.
No,
that's not.
No, okay.
It's not. Actually, the market tells me.
Right.
If they're growing for months and months and months, it means the market wants it.
Okay, but what if the problem is that they don't have this repeatable flywheel and not the product? How do you know which one is which?
Well, I mean, if they don't have the repeatable flywheel, I'll ask them how they got the customers. I'll see it's not repeatable. Yeah. It's very easy to ascertain.
Yeah, no, but I guess what I'm saying is, how do you know when it's not a digital marketing, when it's a digital marketing, it's a marketing problem, and when it's not a product problem, or vice versa?
You're right. It could be that they have the right selling process, but actually the product is shit.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Vice versa.
You don't know.
I don't know. I don't care.
Okay.
I won't invest anyway.
Right.
Right? No, you're right. It could be that the product is bad.
But if you want to help them...
You could have, you have usually an intuition after doing this for so many years. Yeah. You can very easily, I talked to a guy today. Oh my God, I hope he's not watching this. Let's not say what he's doing.
Okay.
But anyway, I looked at this thing and I'm like, immediately I'm like, this is useless. Like no one needs this. I know so many companies. I know what they need. I know what they pay for, what they use.
Yeah.
And his thing, I was like, do I know any company who would pay for this?
So I
see hundreds of startups, so I have a feel.
No, I have that intuition as well. The intuition is not always right. But,
that's true.
But it's right.
So prove me wrong with sales.
It's right, exactly. It's right most of the time.
No, it's interesting to note that intuition is wrong often, and that's okay. Mine, yours, I think everyone is. And I want to be proven wrong by the market. Yeah. Many times I've seen an entrepreneur and I was like, this works? People are buying this? I was amazed. I wouldn't think. Yeah. But prove it to me by the numbers. And the guy in question I'm telling you about that I met today, he sells on 0. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm right.
Yeah. There's some nuances there. I think you're right. I often come across things that I'm surprised by. People actually buy that. I didn't ever think people would. But when you've got this problem situation where sales aren't growing, often the product needs tweaking, I find.
It's possible.
But sometimes the problem is that they're just not marketing it the right way. Yeah. And so I suppose in a way what you're trying to do is figure out where the problem is and just kind of clear the blocks out.
Yeah.
And in a way, if you can solve one problem, then you can figure out it must be the other thing.
Absolutely.
And it probably is just those two things, isn't it? Or can it be something else?
It can be many things. It can be other things. It can be that the especially if it's a B2B sales process, it can be that the founders are not good salespeople.
Right.
That happens a lot. Yeah. There's 2 tech founders and they're just not good at sales. They're just not good at all. They have the demos, but they're just not converting.
Yeah.
It can be that there's a pricing problem. So the product is good. The consumers do want the solution, but if it's too expensive, they're not going to buy it. Mm-hmm. If it's too cheap, they're not going to buy it either because they don't trust that it's a solution.
Yeah, or because if they're trying to sell something that's critical to the company, but it's too cheap, they might think, it's just going to break. So
or even the pricing is not set up properly, so it's a subscription, but people don't want a subscription, or it's a one-time off and they want a one-time off, or it's a commission-based, but people don't want to pay commission, they want to pay a flat fee. Like there's a lot of other possibilities.
And how do you figure that stuff out? Is it just do a bit of A/B testing?
Yeah, exactly. It's always the same thing, and I tell them, have you tried selling it that way? Like this is very basic, but sometimes they haven't thought of trying. So, like, oh, have you tried selling it as a subscription? This happened to me today as well. It's like, do you do affiliate links? No? Okay. How much money are you making? Oh, you're not making money. Okay, try affiliate links. And they're like, oh, my God. The founder was like, no one ever suggested this to me ever. I was like, well, now they have. Go try it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm right. Maybe it's lame, but try it.
Well,
the market will tell you.
So we touched earlier on the inspector perspective versus the entrepreneur perspective. And I think the advantage of doing what we do is that you see what everyone does.
Exactly.
You see all the different things that different people do. And so you know all the techniques that exist.
Exactly.
And when you see someone that's not employing them, you can say, well, have you tried that?
Exactly.
And that in some ways, I think, is part of the value that investors can bring. They can take the lessons that they learn from one or other business they've been involved with and say, why don't you try this? And that goes for a whole host of things for startups, not just product market fit, from how they deal with their investors,
absolutely,
how they
hiring,
all of that stuff,
absolutely,
and all the things that you need actually to scale a startup. And I suppose you learned a lot of those skills when you were running your syndicate, and I guess now that you're running your own venture capital firm, you've taken those skills and you're able to transfer them and hone and tune what you do and do it even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So the next question I'd like to ask you is about your investment approach. In other words, how do you evaluate startups, and what are the criteria you use when you are looking at an investment and trying to make a decision as to whether you're going to invest or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's this is a process that I think about a lot because it's my job. It's what I do on a daily basis, and there's a lot of things that goes into that answer. So I could spend the next 2 hours explaining this to you, but if I want to sum it up and if I want to go to the essentials, the number one thing for me is early traction.
Right.
So I'm a seed investor. So most people sometimes say to me, "Oh, you're doing seed, but you want traction." That doesn't make sense. Most startups in seed haven't achieved traction. First of all, what do I mean by traction? Traction is growth in revenue numbers in terms of dollars for at least 2-3 months, ideally more, and exponentially. So it's growing, not linearly, but exponentially. So most startups are not able to achieve this at the seed stage, and I'm looking for the rare startups that do. That's really the number one thing. And the reason... Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. So going back to that product market fit point that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
And when you look for that, what evidence do you ask the startups to provide? How deep do you go in terms of your DD on that? Because every startup will say, yeah, we're growing fast, but you have to look at what's really happening, right?
Absolutely. The good thing is it comes down to the dollars. I'm looking at the amount of money. So, I just ask them, how much did you make last month? How much are you making this month?
So do you ask them for a spreadsheet showing monthly revenues? Do you look at their bank statements?
Yeah, absolutely. In some cases. Yeah. Right. When there's doubt. The good thing with when there is doubt, if there is doubt...
there's lack of clarity, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. But the good thing is I'm only investing in YC, right? So there's an amount of trust already in there that's pretty big. Because YC vets them, because YC teaches them how to do that, and there's no real incentive to be lying. I'm looking out for that anyway. Some companies are kind of trafficking or changing the numbers, and that's obviously a huge red flag. Yeah. But it's very, very rare. And yes, I do have due diligence. I'm seeing either bank statements or Stripe dashboards or anything.
Yeah. So I guess if you sense any lack of clarity about something when you're in discussions with the founders, then you would go to that next level of DD.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Or pass automatically if something's doesn't feel right. Yeah. You can feel it, because I talk to so many startups. You can feel very easily if the founder knows what he's talking about, and you can see if the answers doesn't match each other. Yeah. If there's one answer that's this number and the other answer is this number, and you make the math in your head and you're like, this doesn't add up. Yeah. You feel something's not looking right.
And I guess the more you do it, the more you get used to that process. And so traction is a key thing. What else?
So the number one thing is traction. And the reason is you want to invest in a startup at one point in time and you want the startup to be bigger later down the road. And so if it has traction, the company is already growing. It's already almost betting on the race after it's finished. Because you already know this company is growing. So that's the number one thing. The second thing in terms of importance for me, I mean, first of all, you got to cover the basics. So the team, the fact that they're honest and smart and ambitious. So that's kind of the basis. But then,
got to be a given.
Sorry,
those things have to be a given.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
it's like I don't even talk about them because everyone has that.
Yeah,
that's not very original. Traction then becomes the most important. The next thing for me is repeatability of the traction. Another way to say it is if you got traction, but you don't know how to scale this 10x, it's not going to work. I think we were talking about this earlier, where companies, they start having more and more and more customers, then you invest, and then it plateaus.
Yeah.
And so how scalable and repeatable is it?
So you need to see some form of flywheel that can accelerate a repeatable process.
Exactly.
And what about the founders themselves? I mean, how closely do you look at the qualities of the founding team?
Very closely. Once again, luckily for me, YC does a lot of the work for me because they're one of their biggest selection criteria is the team.
Yes.
I'm looking at if there's two or more founders and they're how they complement each other. So if there's a tech founder and a sales guy or something, I'm looking. Of course, everyone.
That's a good combination in your view.
Yeah.
Okay.
CEO and a CTO.
And what if there's one founder? What do you look for?
One founder is rare that I invest in them unless they're very credible, unless they're a repeat founder, they've sold the business. So I'm also looking at repeat founders. I think all investors are. It's a great sign if someone already has created and someone already sold a company, that they already know what they're doing. The learning curve at the beginning is huge, so they've already went through it.
Yes.
If there's just one person, it's less likely that I'm going to invest.
Yeah. So on a first-time startup, it's probably a founder team of 2.
Ideally, or 3 or 4.
Yeah. Although I guess the more people, the more chance there is of some disagreement.
Exactly.
But I would have thought the sweet spot would be 2. Would you agree or not?
No, it could be 3. 2 or 3 is the sweet spot. 4, 5, 6 isn't necessarily an issue if they work together well.
Yeah.
And the good thing is if one of them drops out, it doesn't kill the business.
Yeah.
If there's 2 of them, if one of them drops out, most likely it kills the business.
Yeah.
So, but the sweet spot is 2 or 3.
Yeah. Or if it's a solo founder, then that's probably going to have to be that solo founder's second startup.
Most likely, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But YC accepts very few solo founders anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
For that reason.
Okay. And anything else in terms of investment criteria?
Yes, there's many more, but on the most important list, once a company has traction, it's actually repeatable and scalable. So they have everything in place to grow, to keep that company growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and they have the right team with the right people. They're honest, they're ambitious, they're not fuzzy with the numbers. Everything makes sense. Then I go to the next biggest thing for me, which is unfair advantage.
Yes.
And unfair advantage is, I think, defensibility, what Warren Buffett calls a moat. Mm-hmm. Basically, if your startup is successful, it's going to be copied. It's going to be replicated.
Yeah.
Sometimes by Google, by the GAFAs, or by someone with more money. Mm. So how defensible is your product? What's unique about you and your team and your vision and the way you do it that makes that, in the end, you're going to be the winner? Because every startup is copied. Uber came out and everybody now is doing a taxi on-demand app. There's Lyft in the US and there's, at least 3 competitors in Europe and there's Grab in Southeast Asia and Didi in China, etc. So how is Uber going to win in the end? So
do you look for market dominance? Is that sufficient in terms of unfair competitive advantage, or does it have to be stronger than that?
I mean, it sometimes can be enough, but it never happens to me because I'm investing in seed. No one is already dominating their market in seed.
No, but they could have potential to dominate a sector.
Oh, yeah.
They can be first in the sector. Yeah. Is that enough for you?
It depends. Most often it isn't. Yeah. First mover advantage has been proven time and time again to not be enough, right?
Yeah.
It could, if a company is so much ahead and growing so quickly that it's impossible to catch up.
Yeah.
It could be, but most often it's not the case.
And I guess particularly not at seed stage. That would be more likely at Series A or maybe Series B stage.
B, C, you could see clear leaders. And, there's also sometimes where there's no winner takes all.
Yes.
So if the company is not the only one on the market, it can still make it big.
Yeah.
And so in that area, the unfair advantage is more of making sure it's going to become big, even if there's others, not make sure there's going to be the only one.
Okay, so if it's mostly not market dominance, what are the key things you look for?
There's thousands of things, and it's different for every company. The most obvious one is patents that defend the tech, but in software, patents don't exist. It's almost nowhere to be found.
And the other problem is if you publish a patent, everyone can see it, so they can then find another way to do the same thing.
So there's trade secrets.
Sometimes you can be giving away your secret, right?
Exactly. So there's trade secrets where you do something, you don't have a patent, but no one knows how you're doing it. That's the Coca-Cola recipe, right?
Sure.
So that's one thing. Something that's very famous at YC is, what do the founders have realized, or what do they know that no one else does?
Yeah.
The best example of this is Airbnb. Everybody thought they were crazy. All the investors at the beginning said, "You're insane. I'm never going to go sleep at someone else's house that I don't know."
Yeah.
But the founders, they knew, because they saw it on their platform. If you have ratings and if you have professional photography of the place, people are actually ready to do it. That's why at the beginning of Airbnb, they were sending for free a professional photographer to your place to take professional pictures of your place. They knew if the pictures were good and the ratings were good, people were actually going to do it. And it happened. But they were the only one to have figured it out initially. So that's something really good. What have you figured out that no one else has? There's the team in itself. Is the team is a repeat founder, or if the team is an big company, if you're doing a self-driving car thing and you're an ex-Tesla guy, then obviously you're better equipped than most people to do that.
Yeah.
There's speed. We mentioned that, right? If you're so much ahead than anyone else. And the last thing, there's funding as well.
Yeah.
If you're able to raise more, if you're able to outraise all of your competitors, you're going to outspend them on marketing. And being at YC is really good to raise more.
Well, that's true. At YC, you do get the attention of the large VC firms, and you're more likely to be able to attract the large amounts of capital that you need to scale quickly. And so I guess YC startups have an advantage in that respect as well. And I think going back to the point that we talked about earlier in terms of being open-minded, really, I suppose, is what it is. Just because you don't think something will work doesn't mean it won't work.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the most interesting ones are the ideas that prove us wrong. We think that won't work, but actually it does. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. If you see the traction and it's there,
exactly,
and you see some competitive advantage, well, maybe you've got to change your mind.
Absolutely. I mean, I love being wrong. First of all, I love it for the entrepreneurs to prove me wrong. It means they succeeded, so that's awesome. Yeah. And I think it's very important to keep what I would call a post-mortem. So companies that you passed on, you didn't believe in, but they actually make it big. And I have a very funny story on this. I actually said no to SoRare. SoRare is the biggest French unicorn. So it's a crypto, NFT, soccer, collectibles thing, a game online. Mm-hmm. And the founder, came to me and offered me to invest. Yeah. And I said no for several reasons, right? And he wanted me to invest 150K. Mm-hmm. If I did, those 150K today would be worth 213 million euros.
Wow. 230
million euros. So
it's a big mistake.
It's probably to date probably the biggest of my life, and that's fine. I did a YouTube video on it. It was a postmortem of why did I say no? What were the reasons? Yeah. And would I do it again today, knowing what I know? And the funny thing is, if the same situation was presenting itself today, I would still say no. I think I was right to say no at the time. This is very interesting to illustrate that my investment criteria is not a crystal ball. No. I can't predict the future.
And I think
it's all about the odds.
Exactly.
I'm by saying no to companies like this that have a bigger chance of failing, I increase my odds of only selecting the best ones.
Yes, and I think founders need to bear that in mind. Just because a VC or a investor has turned them down for investment doesn't mean they don't have a good idea. Absolutely. It just means it doesn't fit their
Absolutely, and it's actually a good thing. Someone turned you down, now you got a chip on your shoulder and you want to prove them wrong and go do it. And I always say to people, I wish you the best. I truly do. Prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you make it big and I missed. Because, for me as an investor, I have other companies. If I missed this one, I missed SoRare, I'm going to make millions some other place for me and for my investors. Yeah. So, I have other... But for this guy, for this business, he has only one shot in his business. I mean, he can create another one later on, but this business is his only chance right now to make it big. So I wish for them to prove me wrong all the time.
Great. Gabriel, we've had a great and wide-ranging chat. You've just done first close on your first VC fund, and you're starting to deploy capital there. I'd love to talk to you about that, but we don't have time today, so we'll save that for a part 2.
Sure.
I just want to ask you a couple of questions in closing. And the first one is, what do you know now that you didn't when you started, and what would you have done differently?
When I started, I was doing everything at the same time. I was piling startups and projects on top of each other, which I think is a huge mistake. I know now my limits. I know that I'm not a superhuman, and that in order to do things well, you got to focus on few things. So I've eliminated a lot of the clutter in my life, including recently selling an old company that I had that just was, a mental burden. I'm really trying to declutter my life professionally.
Yeah.
And so if I was younger, telling myself what to do, I would say, stop doing 4 companies at the same time. First of all, you look like an idiot, because everyone that's has a little bit of experience knows that if you're creating 4 companies, you're doing nothing, basically. So that's really, I think, the main thing. And I've really decluttered my professional life and focused on one thing and do it right. That's one thing. And the other thing I would say is do something that you love. My first businesses, we talked about them, social media, wine, etc. They're not my deep passions.
Yeah.
I didn't really care about them. I was more opportunistic.
But maybe you had to do them to discover what you love.
Probably.
Yeah.
But in any case, I think going after, for example, going in the wine business, where there's so many passionate people. I mean, I'm French. I love wine like the next French people. But it's not my passion, right? So, and I was seeing other people that were so much more passionate than me about wine. So I think life is short. We don't know how much time we have on this little blue rock that's called Earth.
Yeah.
So you might as well do something that you really, really, truly enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point, isn't it? At the end of the day, the money is needed to make the thing work, but really, what's the point in doing it if you're not enjoying it?
Exactly.
We have to enjoy life. We're here for a short time.
Exactly.
Gabriel, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I've learned an enormous amount, and I'm sure that people listening to this have learned a lot as well, an enormous amount too. We need to bring this to a close, but is there anything else that you'd like to say or mention or just talk about before we sign off?
I mean, we could briefly touch on reading. I mentioned this to you off the podcast, and I thought you said you were interested in that.
I am.
So I've been reading around 50 non-fiction books per year.
Wow.
For the past 6-7 years.
Okay, so tell me about some of the ones you really want to talk to people about.
I'm gonna give a number of books, sure, but even if I don't say any book titles, just taking up that habit really changed my life.
Yes.
And by non-fiction, I mean, business books and how to, anything goes that, personal development or business or entrepreneurship or investing, everything. And just that habit, I mean, some books, you read them and you don't like them. But the few books that you read that have an impact on you are life-changing. So there's many that happen for me. Even if you don't read 50 is maybe extreme. Yeah. But so few people read nowadays. And I really did change my life. And so we really encourage anyone here to start reading, even if it's 5 per year for the first year, and then the next year maybe 10, or you can do 12, right? It's one per month.
Yeah.
I mean, the book that had the most impact on my life is The 4-Hour Work Week.
Oh, by Tim Ferriss. Okay.
Today, it doesn't mean much to me, but when I read it, I was 18. It really did change my life, showed me the way, etc., etc.
There are some great lessons in that book. Yeah. I read it a long time ago, so I don't remember everything in it, but I think reading opens your mind. It gives you ideas. Yeah. I mean, I've read a couple of books recently, or listened to, I should say, by David Deutsch. One is The Beginning of Infinity. And,
I read that as well.
Right. And it's really got, in some ways, not a lot to do with investing, but it gave me ideas.
For sure.
And I think, I don't know if that's the point you're making, but I think maybe it is. It just opens your mind to new possibilities.
It does.
That you hadn't thought about.
And the way I see reading is it allows you to directly plug your brain on someone else's brain.
Yeah.
And it's usually someone much smarter than you. That's why they wrote a book. Mm-hmm. So you're able to download content from someone so much smarter. Yes. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah.
So you're literally plugged on someone else's brain. So it's fascinating. So, the 4-Hour Work Week today wouldn't, bring me much, I guess. But at the time, 15 years ago, was huge.
Yeah.
I would, I can only recommend so many. There's so many books, but I can say Ray Dalio is a very fascinating author.
Yep.
Principles and everything else is written since. And Nassim Nicholas Taleb for me is huge. The series of 3, that's Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, and Skin in the Game. Yep. Amazing. There's many more, but this is the starter pack.
And I don't think Black Swan's his most interesting book. There's a book that he's written about risk. The name escapes me. We'll put the books in the show notes. You and I'll have a little chat after this. We'll get a list of books and we'll put them in the show notes.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree. Nicholas Nassim Taleb is super interesting, and his ideas about risk, I think, are a lot what drives my investing philosophy, and I suspect what drives yours as well.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And I think another person that's really worth listening to that you mentioned yesterday is Naval Ravikant. He is a very successful angel investor. And he's spent a lot of time thinking about what he does. And,
absolutely.
So I think
fascinating guy. Yeah.
He is a fascinating guy. Yeah. All right, Gabriel. Look, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom and your thoughts. I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to doing a round 2.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to do round 2 anytime, and thanks for a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. All right. See you soon.
See you.
Bye.